The warning beacon had been broadcasting for 300 years. Every ship that passed within a light year of the Sol system received the same message in every known language. Quarantine zone, no landing permitted, no salvage authorized, all who enter are lost. Captain Vextra had heard the message 17 times during their approach, and she had ignored it 17 times. Her ship, the Broken Promise, drifted through the debris field that surrounded Earth like a ring of metal corpses. Dozens of vessels floated here, some centuries old, others more recent. All of them were dark. All of them were silent. Vextra's 4 eyes tracked the wrecks as her chitinous fingers moved across the control panel. Her kind, the Zithra, had evolved from hive insects on a world of eternal twilight. They saw heat signatures better than visible light, and right now those dead ships glowed with the cold of deep space. "Captain, I must protest this course of action." The voice came from behind her. Holmes stood at his station, his massive body carved from living stone or something very much like it. His species, the Gorith, were silicon-based, thinking rocks that moved with surprising grace. The warnings exist for a reason. 47 expeditions have come to this world. 47 expeditions have vanished. Vextra clicked her mandibles, a gesture of dismissal. 47 expeditions full of treasure hunters and fools. We are professionals. We have Series 7. At the mention of her name, the android looked up from her console. Series 7 was beautiful in the way that synthetic beings often were, perfect and uncanny. Her body was humanoid, built by the Makers Guild to specifications pulled from ancient human archives. She had chosen to look human because she found their extinct civilization fascinating. "I have analyzed the available data," Series 7 said, her voice musical and precise. "There are no verifiable reports from any expedition that reached Earth. They simply stopped transmitting. However, Captain Vextra is correct that most previous attempts were poorly planned opportunistic ventures. See?" Vextra turned back to the viewport. "We go in quick, we take what we can carry, we leave. The galaxy is dying, Holm. The wars have drained everything. Worlds are starving. If we don't take risks, we don't survive." Holmes said nothing, but his body creaked, the sound of stone grinding against stone. It was how his people sighed. In the back of the ship, the twins were arguing. Kree and Cora were Avieks, bird-like beings with hollow bones and feathers that shimmered like oil on water. They served as scouts, their sharp eyes and ability to fly making them invaluable for reconnaissance. "I'm just saying," Kree chirped, "that if no one ever comes back, maybe there's a reason better than they were unlucky." Cora preened her wing feathers, unconcerned. "You worry too much, brother. The universe is full of dangers. We fly anyway." The last member of the crew sat in the engine room surrounded by humming machinery. Thon was young for a Saurian, barely into his 3rd decade. His scales were still bright green, not yet dulled by age. He had joined the crew to pay off his family's debts, and he worked harder than anyone Vextra had ever known. Right now, his clawed hands moved through a holographic display, checking and rechecking every system. "Entering atmosphere in 2 minutes," Series 7 announced. "I am detecting unusual electromagnetic interference. Communications with our support ship may be affected." Vextra felt a flutter in her thorax, the Zithra equivalent of nervousness. She pushed it down. Expected. Earth's magnetosphere was always unstable according to the records. "Maintain course." The Broken Promise shuddered as it hit the upper atmosphere. Through the viewport, Vextra watched as the planet revealed itself. It was beautiful. Blue oceans, green and brown continents, swirls of white clouds. It looked alive, which was impossible. Earth had been dead for 300 years. Humanity had vanished, their colonies abandoned, their homeworld left to rot. No one knew why. They had simply disappeared within a single generation, as if they had never existed at all. There. Series 7 pointed to a section of the eastern continent. "Former population center. Designate New York City. Large concentration of intact structures. Optimal for salvage." The ship descended through clouds that seemed thicker than they should be. Thon reported fluctuations in the engine core. The twins reported strange shadows in the clouds, shapes that moved against the wind. Holm reported a feeling of wrongness that he could not quantify. Vextra ignored them all and brought the ship down. They landed in what had once been a park, now overgrown with vegetation that had reclaimed the careful human landscaping. Trees grew through benches. Vines covered statues. In the distance, towers of glass and steel rose like the bones of some enormous creature, their surfaces cracked but still standing. It was eerily preserved, as if humanity had simply walked away one day and never returned. Atmospheric analysis complete, Series 7 reported. Breathable for most of the crew. Kree and Cora will need supplemental oxygen. No biological hazards detected. No hazards at all? Holmes' voice rumbled like distant thunder. That seems unlikely for an abandoned world. Vextra was already moving toward the airlock. We waste time. Thawne, stay with the ship and keep the engines ready. Everyone else, standard salvage formation. Series 7, find us the nearest cache of technology. Twins, aerial reconnaissance. Holm, you're with me. The airlock hissed open and Earth's air rushed in. It smelled of rain and growing things, of decay and soil. It smelled alive. Vextra stepped out onto soil that had not felt intelligent footsteps in 3 centuries. The others followed, their equipment clicking and humming in the silence. The silence was the first thing that struck them all. No insects, no birds, no rustling of small animals. Just the whisper of wind through abandoned buildings and the distant groan of settling metal. Cities were never this quiet. Even dead ones had rats, had scavengers, had something. Fan out, Vextra ordered. Stay in communication range. Mark anything valuable. They moved into the ruins of New York City like ghosts exploring a graveyard. Series 7 sensors led them to a building that had once been a technology center, its lobby still bearing faded signs in human languages. Inside, they found computer systems still intact, cables and devices scattered as if people had left in a hurry. But it was what they found next to the computers that made them stop. Bones. Not human bones. The skeleton was too tall, with too many joints in the limbs. An alien skeleton wearing the remnants of a uniform that bore no known insignia, and next to it a datapad still clutched in its bony fingers. Series 7 carefully extracted the datapad and activated it. The screen flickered to life, showing a log entry in Galactic Common. Day 17. We should not have come. The others are gone. I hear them calling, but when I follow the voices, there is nothing. Only empty rooms. Only silence. I see shapes in the windows, but they vanish when I look directly at them. This place is wrong. Earth is wrong. If anyone finds this, turn back. Turn back, turn back. Turn. The log ended abruptly. 17 days, Cora's voice came over the comm. They survived 17 days. What happened on day 18? No one answered. Holm knelt by the skeleton, his stone fingers surprisingly gentle. This being died of exposure and starvation. But why? Their ship would have had supplies. Why did they not return to it? Look at this. Series 7 had moved to the wall. Carved into the concrete, scratched deep with something sharp, were words in dozens of languages. The same message repeated over and over. We buried it for you. We buried ourselves with it. Do not dig. Do not wake. Do not remember. Vextra felt her air spiracles flutter rapidly, her body's automatic response to stress. Superstitious nonsense. Humans trying to scare away salvagers. Keep moving. But as they explored deeper into the building, they found more skeletons, more species, more messages. Some of the remains were decades old, others mere years. All of them had died the same way, slowly, as if they had simply forgotten to return to their ships, as if something had made them forget. The twins reported from above. They had found a massive structure beneath the city, visible from the air where the ground had collapsed. It was artificial, a perfect geometric shape buried under buildings and streets. It pulsed with a faint energy that made their instruments scream with interference. That's our target, Vextra decided. That's where the real technology is. Underground facilities always have the best salvage. Holm placed a hand on her shoulder, his stone fingers heavy. Captain, I have lived for 400 years. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have walked on dead worlds and thrived on living ones. I am telling you now, as your friend and crew member, that this place is wrong. We should leave. Vextra looked at him, at the concern in his ancient eyes. Then she looked at the datapad in Series 7's hands, at the skeleton on the floor, at the warnings on the walls. She thought about her crew, about the debts that hung over all of them, about the dying galaxy that needed resources it no longer had. We came here for a reason, she said finally. We take one look at the underground facility. If it's too dangerous, we leave. I promise. It was a promise she would not be able to keep. They found the entrance 3 hours later, hidden beneath what had once been a subway station. The stairs went down, down into darkness that their lights could not fully penetrate. The walls were covered in more warnings, and these ones were different. They were not in alien languages. They were in human languages, hundreds of them, covering every surface. Please, they said. Please don't. Please turn back. Please remember us. Please forgive us. Please don't let it out. At the bottom of the stairs was a door. It was massive, made of metal alloys that Series 7 scanners could not identify. It was sealed with locks that used technology far beyond what humanity should have possessed. And carved across its surface in letters 3 feet tall were the final words, "We died so you could live. Let us stay dead." Vextra stared at the door for a long moment. Behind her, she could hear Cora's nervous breathing, Holmes' creaking uncertainty, Series 7's processing hums. Through the comm, she could hear Thon's voice from the ship, asking if they were okay, saying that his instruments were detecting strange energy fluctuations. She reached out and placed her hand on the door. It was cold, colder than it should be, cold like space, like the void between stars, like the absence of all heat and life. "Open it," she said. And even as Series 7's tools began to work on the locks, even as Holmes whispered that they were making a mistake, even as the twins held each other in fear, Vextra knew. She knew that they had already stayed too long. She knew that the warnings had been real. She knew that they should have listened. The first lock clicked open with a sound like breaking bones, and somewhere deep below, something that had been sleeping for 300 years began to wake. The door opened with a sound like a dying breath, a long exhalation of stale air that had been trapped for centuries. The darkness beyond was absolute, swallowing their lights as if hungry for illumination. Vextra felt every instinct in her body screaming to run, but she had made a career of ignoring instincts. Instincts did not pay debts. Instincts did not feed starving colonies. Life signs? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Series 7's eyes glowed blue as she scanned the passage ahead. Negative. No organic life detected. However, I am receiving unusual readings. There are electromagnetic patterns that suggest active technology, but they do not match any known signatures in my database. Active technology means power, Vextra said. Power means something worth taking. Let's move. They descended into the facility in single file, their lights cutting narrow beams through the darkness. The passage was wide enough for 3 of them to walk side by side, its walls smooth and metallic. Every 20 feet there were panels covered in human writing, but the language had degraded over time, or perhaps it had been deliberately obscured. Series 7 paused at each one, her processors working to decode the fragments. Warning, containment, dimensional, failure catastrophic. She read aloud. The text is badly damaged, but these appear to be safety protocols of some kind. For what? Cora asked, her voice small in the oppressive quiet. I cannot determine that with the available data. They walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. The passage sloped steadily downward, taking them deep beneath the city. The temperature dropped with each step, their breath forming clouds in the beam of their lights. Holmes' stone body conducted heat poorly, so he was unaffected, but the others began to shiver. Captain? Kree's voice crackled over the comm from above ground where he had stayed to maintain their perimeter. I'm seeing something strange up here. The buildings. I think they're moving. Vextra stopped. Buildings don't move, Kree. Are you certain? I don't know. It's hard to explain. When I look directly at them, they're still. But in my peripheral vision, I swear I see them shifting. And there are shapes in the windows. Figures. But when I fly closer to investigate, there's nothing there. Probably just reflections, Vextra said, trying to sound confident. Or debris moving in the wind. Stay alert, but don't let your imagination run wild. Yes, Captain. Kree did not sound convinced. The passage finally opened into a vast chamber, and their lights, pathetic as they were, could not find the far walls or ceiling. It was like standing at the edge of an underground ocean of darkness. But as they moved forward, motion-sensitive lights began to flicker on, one by one, revealing the true scope of the space. It was enormous. The chamber stretched for what must have been half a mile in every direction, filled with machinery that defied understanding. Massive cylinders rose from floor to ceiling, connected by cables as thick as Thon's body. Between them, holographic displays flickered with data streams that moved too fast to read. And everywhere were screens showing human faces, thousands of them, tens of thousands, men, women, children, elderly, every race, every age, all of them frozen in expressions of calm determination. Their eyes were closed as if they were sleeping, but something about the images suggested they were very much awake. "What is this?" Cora whispered, and her voice echoed strangely in the vast space, coming back to them distorted and wrong. Series 7 moved to the nearest terminal, her hands dancing over controls that responded to her touch despite centuries of disuse. Data flooded across her vision, and for a long moment she was silent, processing. When she finally spoke, her usually steady voice carried a note of something that might have been horror. "This is a consciousness storage facility," she said. "These cylinders contain uploaded human minds. Millions of them. They are not dead. They are active, thinking, dreaming, or perhaps not dreaming, perhaps doing something else entirely. Why?" Holm moved closer to one of the cylinders, his stone fingers reaching out but not quite touching the surface. "Why would they do this?" "I am accessing the main database now," Series 7 said. Her eyes flickered rapidly as terabytes of information poured into her systems. "There are personnel logs, research notes, project files. Give me a moment to compile a coherent narrative." While they waited, Vextra explored the chamber. The technology here was worth more than she could calculate. Every component, every wire, every processor could buy them a life of comfort. But something about the sleeping faces on the screens made her hesitate. They looked peaceful, but there was something underneath that peace. Something that suggested they were not resting but rather standing watch. "I have it," Series 7 said finally. "The Resonance Project. It began approximately 320 years ago. Humanity discovered a method to tap directly into dark energy, the force that makes up most of the universe. They built reactors that could draw unlimited power from the space between spaces." "That's impossible," Holmes said. "Every civilization has tried. Dark energy cannot be harnessed. Humanity succeeded," Series 7 continued. "But they should not have. Dark energy was not empty. It was not lifeless. It was inhabited." The lights in the chamber flickered. Just for a moment, just long enough for them to notice. And in that moment of darkness, Vextra thought she saw something moving between the cylinders, something that was not there when the lights returned. "Inhabited by what?" she demanded. "The logs call them the hollows. They exist outside normal space-time, in the spaces between dimensions. When humanity opened a door to harvest dark energy, they accidentally let the hollows in, and the hollows were hungry." Series 7 pulled up a video file on one of the larger screens. It showed a human research facility, bright and clean and full of scientists working at their stations. The timestamp said it was from 319 years ago. The video played in fast motion. The scientists worked. They celebrated a successful test. And then one of them stopped moving. Just stopped in the middle of reaching for a cup of coffee. Her hand hovered in the air, trembling. Other scientists rushed to her, speaking words the video's audio did not capture. The woman collapsed. When they turned her over, her face was ancient. Her body withered to a husk as if she had aged 100 years in seconds. She was dead before she hit the floor. And in the video's background, barely visible, something moved through the wall, something that was not quite there. Not quite anywhere, a shape that hurt to look at because it was the absence of shape, the void given form. "The hollows feed on consciousness," Series 7 explained as the video continued, showing more people collapsing, more husks left behind. They drain the life from thinking beings, leaving only empty shells. They spread rapidly. Within weeks, they had infected every research facility working with dark energy. Within months, they had begun to appear in cities. Humanity tried to fight them. But how do you fight something that is not really there? "How did they stop them?" Cora asked. She had moved closer to her brother through the comm link, as if proximity to his voice could offer comfort. "Obviously they did, or the hollows would have spread beyond Earth." The video changed. Now it showed humans, thousands of them, voluntarily walking into facilities like this one. They were saying goodbye to their families, to their children, to their lives. They were smiling even as tears ran down their faces. "They couldn't stop the hollows," Series 7 said quietly. "They couldn't close the breach they had opened. So they built a prison instead. They created a network of facilities like this one across the entire planet, and then they filled them with themselves." "I don't understand," Vextra said, though part of her was beginning to, and that part was screaming. Consciousness creates a field that affects space-time. Normally, individual consciousness is too weak to matter. But millions of minds linked together focused on a single purpose can create a barrier. The humans uploaded themselves into these machines and used their combined consciousness to build a cage. A cage around Earth, a cage to trap the hollows forever. The chamber was silent except for the hum of machinery. The faces on the screen seemed to watch them now, their closed eyes somehow aware. They sacrificed themselves. Holmes' voice was thick with emotion that stone should not be able to feel. An entire species committed suicide to save the rest of the galaxy. Not suicide, Series 7 corrected. They are still alive in a sense. Their consciousness persists, eternally vigilant, eternally holding the hollows at bay. Earth is not a tomb. It is a prison that requires living guards who can never sleep, never rest, never stop watching. Then we leave, Vexitra said immediately. We leave now. We seal this place behind us and we make sure no one ever comes back. But as she turned to go, Kree's voice came over the comm, high and panicked. Something's wrong. Cora, where are you? Cora, answer me. Cora's comm clicked on. They could hear her breathing, fast and frightened. I'm in the city, in one of the tall buildings. I thought I saw something and I followed it. But now I can't find the way out. The hallways keep changing, and I hear voices. I hear Kree calling me, but his voice is coming from deeper in the building, not from my comm. Kree, is that you? Kree? Cora, don't follow the voice. Kree screamed. I'm outside. I'm above the city. That's not me calling you. But Cora was already moving. They could hear her footsteps over the comm running, chasing a voice that sounded like her brother's, calling her name with perfect inflection, with perfect love, leading her deeper and deeper into the dark. Cora, stop, Vextra shouted. Return to the ship immediately. That's an order. The comm went silent. Then after a moment that felt like eternity, it clicked back on. Cora's voice came through, but it was different now, slower, confused. Captain, where am I? I was flying above the city, and then I was here. How long have I been here? Cora, listen to me very carefully, Vextra said, keeping her voice calm through sheer force of will. Follow your comm signal back to us. Don't follow any voices. Don't follow anything except your instruments. Do you understand? Yes, Captain. I understand. I'm coming to you now. They waited. The minutes stretched. Series 7 tracked Cora's signal as it moved through the city above them, heading toward their position. It was moving at the right speed, following the right path. Everything seemed normal. Then Thawne's voice crackled through. Captain, I have eyes on someone approaching the entrance to the underground facility. But, Captain, you need to see this. Series 7 pulled up the ship's external cameras on one of the screens. The image showed the entrance to the facility, the stairs leading down to where they stood. And walking down those stairs, moving with Cora's characteristic grace, was Cora. Except it was not Cora. The shape was right. The size was right. The way it moved was perfect. But there was something wrong about the quality of the image. As if the figure was not quite in focus, not quite real. As if someone had made a copy of Cora from memory and the memory was imperfect. That's not me. Cora's voice came over the comm, thick with terror. I'm still in the city. I'm still 10 minutes away. What is that thing? The thing that looked like Cora reached the bottom of the stairs. It turned toward the camera and its face was perfect except for the eyes. The eyes were closed, just like the faces on the screens. Just like the uploaded humans, eternally dreaming, eternally watching. It opened its mouth and Cora's voice came out, but wrong. Layered with static and something underneath the static that might have been screaming. Captain, the door. You opened the door. Then it walked past the camera and disappeared into the darkness of the facility, heading toward them. Seal the chamber! Vextra shouted. Seal everything, now! But Series 7's hands were shaking as they moved across the controls. Captain, I cannot. The security systems are overridden. Something else is controlling them. Something that has been waiting for us to open the door. The lights in the chamber began to flicker faster, and in each moment of darkness they saw more shapes moving between the cylinders. Shapes that wore familiar faces. Shapes that looked like the skeletons they had found above, but walking. Moving, reaching out with hands that passed through solid matter. We should not have come, Holmes said, and his voice carried the weight of stone, the certainty of something carved into rock. The humans tried to warn us. All those expeditions tried to warn us, and we did not listen. The thing that looked like Cora emerged from the passage. Behind it, more shapes followed, an endless parade of not quite right figures wearing the faces of the dead and the missing. They moved with a grace that was beautiful and terrible, their closed eyes seeing more than open eyes ever could, and somewhere in the vast darkness of the chamber, Something that had been trapped for 300 years began to laugh. It was not a sound that should have been able to exist. It was the sound of space itself tearing, of reality coming undone. It was the sound of the hollows, finally free, finally fed, finally remembering what it was like to feast on consciousness. Vextra looked at her crew, at Series 7's terrified eyes, at Holmes' stoic face carved in stone, and she knew that they had made a terrible mistake. The warnings had been real. The silence that surrounded Earth had been real. And now they were going to discover exactly what happened to expeditions that came to this world. Now they were going to become one of the warnings. But not yet. Not if she could help it. "Run," she said simply. And they did. They ran through corridors that twisted in ways that should not have been possible. Vexitra's 4 legs carried her faster than the others, but she forced herself to stay with the group. Behind them, the shapes followed at a walking pace, never hurrying, never stopping. They did not need to run because there was nowhere to run to. "The passage is different," Holm rumbled as they turned a corner that Vextra did not remember from their descent. "We are not going the way we came." He was right. The walls were darker here, the light spaced farther apart, and there were doors now, dozens of them lining the corridor, each one marked with human symbols that Series 7 could not take the time to translate. "Keep moving," Vextra ordered. "Don't stop, don't look back, just move." But Series 7 did stop, her hand catching the frame of one of the doors. "Captain, wait. This one, the markings say archives. If we want to understand what we are facing, if we want any hope of survival, we need information. We need to run." Cora's voice came through the comm, still distant, still terrified. "I can see the entrance to the facility now, but there are more of those things. They're everywhere, Captain. They're pretending to be all of us. I can see myself walking around. I can see Thon, but Thon is still on the ship. What are they?" Thon's voice joined hers, young and scared. "Captain, I'm reading energy spikes all over the city. The ship's systems are going crazy. I recommend immediate evacuation." Vextra looked back down the corridor. The shapes were closer now, close enough that she could see the details of their faces. There was Cora, walking with her eyes closed and her mouth moving as if singing a song no one could hear. There was something wearing Holmes' form, carved from shadow instead of stone. There was Vextra herself, or something pretending to be her, clicking mandibles that made sounds like breaking glass. 5 minutes, she decided. "We take 5 minutes in the archives. Series 7, download everything you can. Home guard the door. We find out what these things are and how to stop them." The archive room was smaller than the consciousness storage chamber, but it was still vast by any reasonable standard. Row upon row of servers stretched into the darkness, their lights blinking like distant stars. Series 7 moved to the nearest terminal with a speed that spoke of desperation. Her fingers blurred across the interface, pulling up files that had not been accessed in 3 centuries. "The Resonance Project," she said, speaking rapidly as data flooded into her systems. "I am accessing the full documentation now. Project lead, Dr. Sarah Chen. Date of inception, April 15th, 2704. Objective, harness dark energy for unlimited power generation." The screens around them lit up with images. Humans in clean white laboratories, smiling for cameras, shaking hands with politicians and military leaders. They had been so proud of their discovery, so certain they were saving their species. "Initial tests were successful," Series 7 continued. "They built a prototype reactor in the Mariana facility deep underwater. It worked perfectly. It generated more power than every other reactor on Earth combined. They immediately began plans to build more. The images changed. Now they showed the same laboratory, but the smiles were gone. The scientists looked tired, haunted. Some of them were not there anymore, replaced by empty chairs and memorial flowers. The first incident occurred 6 weeks after activation. A technician named Marcus Webb was performing routine maintenance on the reactor core. His colleagues reported that he stopped responding to radio calls. When they found him, he was dead. His body was intact but desiccated, as if all the water had been drawn out of his cells. He had aged 50 years in 5 minutes. Vexitra watched the screen as it showed security footage of the incident. The technician was there one moment, working normally. Then he froze. Then he simply fell, his body crumbling like paper. And in the corner of the footage, barely visible, something moved. Something that was not there but somehow cast a shadow anyway. "They called it an accident," Series 7 said. Equipment malfunction, radiation exposure, they made up explanations. But then it happened again, and again, always near the reactor, always the same way. Someone would stop moving, would age rapidly, would die. The facility was quarantined. Military teams were sent in to investigate. The footage changed to show soldiers in heavy armor moving through the facility with weapons raised. They found bodies, dozens of them, all aged to death. But they found no enemy, no creature, no threat. Just empty corridors and the humming of the reactor still running perfectly. That is when Dr. Chen made her discovery, Series 7 said. She analyzed the reactor's energy signature and found something impossible. The dark energy they were harvesting was not pure. It contained information, patterns, and those patterns resembled neural activity, consciousness. The screen showed a woman with tired eyes and gray-streaked hair. Dr. Sarah Chen, speaking directly to the camera, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of terror barely contained. We thought dark energy was empty, the recording played. We thought we were taking power from nothing. But nothing does not exist. Everything is something. And dark energy is alive, or it contains life, or it is adjacent to life in ways we cannot understand. We opened a door. We opened it and something came through. Something that has been waiting in the spaces between spaces for longer than our species has existed. The recording cut to static, then resumed. Dr. Chen looked older now, more haggard. We tried to shut down the reactor. We tried to close the door. But it is too late. The hollows are here. That is what we call them. The hollows. Because that is what they are. They are the absence of everything. They are holes in reality given the ability to move and hunt and feed. They eat consciousness. They drink minds. And when they are done, all that is left is an empty shell that aged to death because there was no longer any life force holding it young. How do you fight them? Someone asked from off camera. Dr. Chen laughed, and it was the saddest sound Vexitra had ever heard. You can't shoot a hole. You can't bomb an absence. They exist in the spaces between atoms, in the gaps in reality. They are not in our dimension. They are adjacent to it. They reach through and take what they want. The recording jumped forward again. Now Dr. Chen was surrounded by other scientists, military leaders, politicians. She was presenting something on a large screen, gesturing at equations that Series 7's processors struggled to comprehend. The only solution is consciousness itself, Dr. Chen said. Consciousness affects space-time. Every thinking being creates a tiny ripple in the fabric of reality. Normally, these ripples are too small to matter, but if we could amplify them, focus them, combine millions of minds into a single directed field, we could create a barrier, a cage made of thought itself. You are proposing mass suicide, one of the military leaders said. I am proposing mass survival, Dr. Chen replied. For the galaxy. The hollows are spreading. Every day more people die. Every day, the barrier between their dimension and ours grows thinner. Within a year they will be unstoppable. Within 5 years they will have consumed every thinking being on Earth. And then they will spread to our colonies, and then to the stars, and then to every other species in the galaxy. So we sacrifice ourselves to save aliens we have never met, the military leader demanded. Yes, Dr. Chen said simply, because that is what being human means. We protect those who cannot protect themselves, even if it costs us everything. The recording ended. Series 7 pulled up more files, more logs, more documentation. They showed the construction of facilities like this one across the planet. They showed humans volunteering in the millions, saying goodbye to their families, uploading their consciousness into machines that would preserve them forever. They showed the barriers being activated, a web of psychic energy wrapping around the entire planet like a cage. And they showed it working. The hollows, visible now through special sensors, writhing and screaming as they were trapped. They could not pass through the barrier of concentrated consciousness. They were held, contained, imprisoned by the very thing they fed upon. Earth became a cage, Series 7 said quietly, and humanity became the lock. Every human who was uploaded sacrificed their freedom, their lives, their futures to keep the hollows contained. They have been here for 300 years, conscious but unable to move, thinking but unable to act, existing only to maintain the barrier that keeps the hollows from spreading. Until we opened the door, Holmes said from his position guarding the entrance. His voice carried centuries of regret. Until we opened the door, Series 7 confirmed. The security systems were designed to seal automatically, but they required human authorization to unseal. No human has existed outside these facilities for 3 centuries. The system was perfect, unbreakable. Except by idiots like us, Vextra said bitterly. We came with our tools and our greed, and we broke open a prison that was meant to last forever. A sound echoed through the facility, distant but getting closer. Singing. Hundreds of voices singing in harmony, a human melody that Series 7 recognized from her cultural databases. It was a lullaby, a song mothers sang to their children. But these voices were wrong, layered with static and undertones that hurt to hear. They are coming, Holm announced. Many of them. Too many to count. Vexitra looked at Series 7. Is there a way to reseal the facility, to put the hollows back in their cage? Series 7's fingers flew across the terminal, accessing system after system. Yes, the containment protocols are still active, but they require authorization from the uploaded consciousness network. And that network is complicated. The humans are still there, still thinking, but they are not individuals anymore. They are a collective, a single vast mind made of millions of parts, and they are angry. Angry at us? Angry at being woken, angry at the breach, angry at having to face the hollows again after 300 years of holding them back. Series 7 paused, her head tilting in a way that meant she was processing something difficult. I am receiving a transmission from the network. It is fragmented, but I can understand parts of it. What are they saying? They are saying that we have undone their sacrifice. They are saying that the hollows will spread now. They are saying that the galaxy will fall because we could not leave well enough alone. Series 7's voice cracked, her emotional subroutines overwhelmed. They are asking why we did not listen to the warnings. Cora's voice suddenly cut through the comm, no longer distant but immediate and terrified. Captain, I am at the entrance to the facility, but I cannot come down. The things, they are blocking the way. There must be 100 of them. They all look like me. They are all singing. Captain, what do I do? Before Vextra could answer, another voice joined the channel. Real Cora's voice, but coming from the facility behind them, coming from the shapes that were hunting them. Sister, the voice sang. Come home. Come down. Come join us in the dark. It does not hurt. It is peaceful here. You will never be afraid again. That is not my sister, Cora screamed. Cree, tell them that is not me. But Cree's voice, when it came, was broken. Cora, which one is real? There are so many of you. All of you are calling my name. All of you sound right. Cora, please. Which one is you? I am me, the one outside. Don't listen to the others. She is lying, the hollow voice sang. She is the fake. We are real. We are your sister. Come to us, brother. Come and see. The singing grew louder. Vextra realized that the shapes had reached the archive room. They stood in the doorway, dozens of them, wearing the faces of the crew. They did not attack. They did not advance. They just stood and sang and waited. Holm, Vextra said. Can you hold them? The stone being looked at the shapes, at the impossible number of them filling the corridor beyond. No, he said simply. I cannot fight what is not there. Then we find another way out. Vextra turned to Series 7. You said the human consciousness network is active. Can you communicate with it? Can you ask them for help? I can try. Series 7 closed her eyes, her processors dedicating themselves fully to the task. The lights in the room flickered as she drew power from every available source, using it to amplify her signal, to reach out to the vast collective mind that surrounded them. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every screen in the room lit up at once. The faces from the consciousness storage chamber appeared, thousands of them, all opening their eyes simultaneously. And they looked at Series 7 with an intensity that would have burned if looks could burn. Why should we help you? The voice came. From every speaker at once, a chorus of humanity speaking as one. You doomed us. You doomed yourselves. You doomed the galaxy. Why should we save you? Because that is what being human means, Series 7 said, and her voice was steady now, filled with certainty. You told us yourself. You protect those who cannot protect themselves, even if it costs you everything. Even if the ones you protect are stupid and greedy and did not listen to your warnings, you protect them anyway. The collective was silent. The faces on the screen stared. Behind them, the shapes began to move forward, their song rising to a crescendo. And then humanity answered. "Run," they said. "Run toward the light. We will hold them. We will hold them as long as we can. But you must seal the door behind you. You must seal it and never come back. Do you understand? Never come back." "Understood," Vexitra said. "Thank you." "Do not thank us," humanity replied. "Just remember. Remember what we did, remember why, and warn the others. Warn everyone. Some doors should never be opened." The screens went dark, and in the darkness, lights began to appear, forming a path through the facility, leading upward, leading out. "Move!" Vexitra shouted. And they ran, following the lights, following humanity's final gift, running toward the surface and the sky and the hope of escape. Behind them, the shapes followed. But they were slower now, held back by something invisible, by the conscious will of millions of dead humans who had chosen once more to sacrifice themselves. They had sacrificed themselves 300 years ago to save the galaxy. Now they sacrificed themselves again to save one small crew of fools who had not listened, because that was what being human meant. The lights led them through corridors they had never seen, through sections of the facility that must have existed in dimensions slightly offset from normal space. The walls here were transparent in places, showing glimpses of the city above and the machinery below. Through those transparent sections, Vextra could see the true scope of what humanity had built. The entire planet was wired. Every continent, every ocean, every inch of Earth's surface was connected to the consciousness network. Billions of nodes, trillions of connections, all of them humming with the thoughts of dead humans who refused to die because their dying would doom the galaxy. They ran past rooms full of servers. They ran past chambers that contained backup systems for backup systems. They ran past walls covered in messages, some typed, some handwritten, all of them variations on the same theme. "We are sorry. We are sorry. Please forgive us. Please remember us. Please don't let it be for nothing." They knew, Siri 7 said as she ran, her android body requiring no breath but her voice still strained. They knew that future generations would forget, that their sacrifice would become legend and then myth and then nothing. They knew, and they did it anyway. Behind them, the shapes were falling further back, but their song continued, echoing through the facility like a promise of what waited if the crew faltered. "Come back," they sang in voices stolen from the dead. "Come rest. Come sleep. Come dream with us in the dark." Thon's voice crackled through the comm and he was crying. "Captain, I can see you on the external cameras. You are almost to the entrance. But there are more of those things outside. They are surrounding the ship. I counted 50 before I stopped counting. They all look like people from the crew, but their eyes are closed and they are just standing there waiting." "Get the engines ready," Vextra ordered. "The moment we are aboard, we take off. Maximum thrust. We don't wait for anything. Captain, the energy readings are off the scale. Whatever is happening down there, it is affecting the whole planet. I am detecting power surges across the entire continental grid. It is like the planet itself is waking up." "It is," Siri 7 said. "The human consciousness network is activating systems that have been dormant for centuries. They are trying to contain the breach we created, but I do not know if they can. The hollows have been trapped for 300 years. They are hungry." They burst through a final door and into the stairwell that led to the surface. The climb was brutal, flight after flight of stairs spiraling upward into darkness. Holmes' stone body was built for endurance, and he led the way, his heavy footsteps setting a rhythm that the others followed. Vextra's 4 legs burned with the effort. Siri 7's joints were overheating from prolonged exertion beyond her design specifications. But they climbed, and as they climbed they heard something new. Not the singing of the shapes, not the humming of machinery, but voices. Human voices, real ones, not stolen copies. They whispered from the walls, from the air itself. "Run," they whispered. "Run faster. They are coming. The door is failing. We cannot hold them much longer. 300 years was too long. We are tired, so tired. But we will hold. We will hold until you are safe. Run. Please run. Cora's voice came through the comm, breathless with panic. I can see you. I'm at the top of the stairs. But Captain, there are things between us. The things that look like me. They are climbing up to meet you. And then they saw her. Real Cora stood at the top of the stairs, her feathers ruffled from fear and exertion, her eyes wide. But between them and her, descending the stairs with slow, deliberate steps, were three figures that also looked like Cora. Their eyes were closed. Their mouths moved in silent song. They reached out with hands that passed through the railings like smoke. Holm, Vextra shouted. Clear the path. The stone being did not hesitate. He lowered his shoulder and charged up the stairs like an avalanche in reverse. The hollow copies of Cora tried to stop him, their hands reaching out to drain his life, his consciousness. But Holm was not fully organic. His mind was distributed through crystalline matrices in his silicon body. The hollows could not find a single point to feed on. He passed through them like they were mist, and they scattered at his touch, reforming behind him but too late. The crew surged after him, following in his wake while the copies were still disoriented. They reached the top of the stairs. Real Cora threw her arms around her brother's voice coming through his comm, both of them babbling relief and fear. Vextra grabbed them both. Later. Move now! They ran through the subway station ruins and up to street level. The city waited for them, silent and watching. The shapes were everywhere. Hundreds of them. Thousands, perhaps, standing in the streets and on the rooftops and in the windows of buildings. They all wore stolen faces. Faces of the crew. Faces of the previous expeditions. Faces of humans long dead. And all of them had their eyes closed. All of them stood perfectly still. They are blocking the path to the ship, Holm observed. His voice was calm, but there was a tremor in it that Vextra had never heard before. Stone should not tremble. Then we go through them, Vextra said. Thon, start the engines. We are coming in fast, they ran. The shapes did not move to stop them, but as the crew passed, the copies reached out. Touched them. Just brief contact. Fingers brushing against skin or scales or feathers. And each touch was cold. Colder than space. Colder than death. The cold of nothing, a void, of absence itself. Series 7 stumbled as one of the shapes touched her shoulder. Her systems flickered. Error messages cascaded through her processors. For a moment she felt something trying to feed on her consciousness, trying to drink her mind. But she was artificial. Her consciousness was code, not neurons. The hollow could not quite figure out how to consume her. She tore away and kept running, smoke trailing from overheated joints. Cora screamed as a shape that wore her face grabbed her wing. She felt something drain from her. Some essential part of herself flowing out through the contact. Her feathers began to gray. Her vision blurred. Then Kree slammed into the shape, breaking the contact, and Cora stumbled forward, her heart racing. Her life returned, but diminished. Holm lifted Vextra bodily as she faltered, carrying her like she weighed nothing. Stay conscious, Captain. That is all you must do. Stay awake. Stay thinking. If you stop thinking, they will take you. The ship was ahead, its ramp extended, its engines beginning to glow with building power. Thon stood at the top of the ramp, waving frantically. Around the ship, the shapes had formed a circle, but they were not advancing. They just stood and watched with closed eyes that somehow saw everything. The crew hit the ramp at full speed. They piled into the ship, falling over each other in their desperation. Thon slammed the ramp control before they were even fully inside. The ramp began to rise, and that was when something went wrong. One of the shapes stepped onto the ramp. It moved faster than the others had, with sudden, terrible purpose. It wore Thon's face. It reached the closing ramp just in time to slip through the narrowing gap. Intruder on board, Series 7 shouted. Seal the internal bulkheads. But the hollow copy of Thon was already moving through the ship. It walked through sealed doors like they were not there. It passed through walls. It existed in the spaces between matter, and matter could not stop it. Get us airborne, Vextra screamed. Thon engines now. The real Thon was at the controls, his claws flying across the interface. The ship shuddered and rose. Below them, the thousands of shapes tilted their heads up in unison, watching the ship climb with their closed eyes. And then as one they opened their mouths. The sound that emerged was not singing anymore. It was screaming. The screaming of things that had been trapped for 3 centuries, that had fed on nothing but the edges of consciousness. that were starving and desperate and finally free. The ship lurched as something grabbed it, not physically, mentally. The hollows that had escaped the facility reached up with invisible hands made of pure void and tried to drag the ship back down. The engines screamed in protest. Alarms blared. The hull began to buckle under impossible pressure. "I cannot break free," Thon shouted. "They are too strong." Series 7 was moving through the ship, hunting for the copy that had boarded. She found it in the engine room, standing in front of the reactor core. It wore Thon's face, but now its eyes were open. And those eyes were not eyes at all. They were holes. Windows into dark energy space, into the realm where the hollows lived. Looking into them was like looking into the space between stars, the vast empty distances where nothing existed and nothing could ever exist. "You are beautiful," the hollow copy said in Thon's voice. "Consciousness in silicon. Mind in metal. We have never tasted this before. Let us in. Let us see what you are." "No," Series 7 said. She knew what it wanted. It wanted to understand her, to map her consciousness so the hollows could learn to feed on artificial minds. If they did, no AI in the galaxy would be safe. "You cannot have me. We can take you. We take everything eventually." The humans understood this. That is why they imprisoned us. That is why they sacrificed themselves, because they knew that we would consume all consciousness in the galaxy if given the chance. We are the dark energy that fills the universe. We are everywhere. We are inevitable. "If you are inevitable," Series 7 said, "then why are you still trapped on Earth?" The copy tilted its head. "Because the humans were strong. Stronger than we expected. Their consciousness burned so bright. Millions of them linked together, focused on a single purpose. We cannot break their barrier. We have tried for 300 years. We cannot even touch it. It is beautiful and terrible and we hate them for it." "Then stay in your cage," Series 7 said, "and let us go." "But you opened the door," the copy replied. "You broke the seal. The barrier is weakening. We can feel it. Soon we will be free. And when we are free, we will spread to the stars. We will feed on every thinking being in the galaxy. We will drink every mind until there is nothing left but empty shells and silence. And it will be because of you." Series 7 looked at the copy. She looked at the reactor core behind it. She looked at her own hands, these artificial hands that could create and build and help. And she made a decision. "No," she said. "It will not." She lunged forward. The copy reached for her, its hands passing into her body, trying to drain her consciousness. She felt it pulling at her mind, trying to understand the code that made her think. Error messages flooded her vision. Systems began to fail. But she did not stop. She reached the reactor core. Her hands moved across the controls with desperate speed. She initiated an emergency purge, venting plasma directly into the engine room. The copy screamed as the superheated gas flooded the space. It could not be burned because it was not really there, but the plasma disrupted its connection to this dimension. It flickered, becoming less substantial, its hold on reality weakening. Series 7 felt the hollow's grip on her consciousness release. She ran from the engine room as blast doors slammed down behind her. Through the closing doors, she saw the copy trying to follow, but it could not pass through the plasma. It was trapped, cut off from the rest of the ship. On the bridge, Thon felt the pressure release. The engine surged back to full power. The ship shot upward, breaking free of the hollow's mental grip. Earth fell away beneath them, beautiful and deadly and silent. "Did we make it?" Cora asked, her voice small. "Are we safe?" Vextra looked at the sensors. They showed the hollows spreading through the city below. They showed the containment field struggling to hold them back. They showed the human consciousness network burning brighter than it had in centuries. Every uploaded mind pushing against the breach, trying to seal what the crew had opened. "No," Vextra said quietly. "We are not safe. None of us are. Not while the hollows exist." Series 7 limped onto the bridge, half her systems offline from the hollow's touch. "The copy is contained in the engine room. But Captain, I detected something before I sealed it. The hollows are growing stronger. The longer the breach remains open, the more they can manifest. The human network is holding them, but it is a losing battle. Eventually the barrier will fail, and when it does, the hollows will spread beyond Earth." "How long?" Holm asked. "Days, maybe weeks, but not long." The crew was silent. They had come to Earth for treasure. They had found a horror beyond imagining, and they had unleashed it on the galaxy. "We have to go back," Cora said suddenly. "We have to help seal the breach." "How?" Vextra demanded. "We are not soldiers. We are not scientists. We are scavengers. What can we possibly do? I do not know, Cora admitted. But we opened that door. We have to close it. Vextra looked at her crew, at Holm, ancient and wise, at the twins, young and scared but brave, at Thon, who had almost died today, at Series 7, who had saved them all. She thought about running, about taking this ship as far from Earth as it could go, and warning the galaxy about what was coming. But she knew it would not be enough. Words were not enough. Warnings were not enough. The galaxy needed action. We go back, she decided. We go back and we find a way to seal that breach. Or we die trying. We will probably die trying, Holm observed. Yes, Vextra agreed. But the humans died 300 years ago and they are still fighting. We can at least match their courage. The ship began to turn, arcing back toward Earth, back toward the hollows, back toward almost certain death. But they went anyway, because they had learned something from the humans who sacrificed everything to save a galaxy they would never meet. Sometimes courage means going back to face the horror you unleashed, even when every instinct screams to run. The ship descended through Earth's atmosphere for the second time, but now the planet looked different. The containment field was visible to the naked eye, a shimmering aurora that wrapped around the globe like a net made of light. In places, the light flickered and dimmed. In places, darkness was seeping through. The barrier is failing faster than I calculated, Series 7 said, her damaged system struggling to process the sensor data. The hollows are concentrating their efforts at the breach points. They are learning, adapting, using our opening of the door as a template for how to open others. Can the human network hold them? Vextra asked, for now. But they are exhausted. 300 years of constant vigilance. 300 years of holding back an enemy that never tires, never sleeps, never stops pushing. They are consciousness without rest, minds without peace. They are breaking. Thon had been silent since they turned back, his young face carved with determination that aged him decades. Now he spoke, his voice steady. What if we added more consciousness to the network? Would that strengthen it? Everyone turned to look at him. He met their eyes without flinching. That is what the humans did, right? They uploaded themselves to create the barrier. What if we did the same? What if we added our minds to theirs? You would die, Holmes said bluntly. Or worse than die. You would exist forever as part of a machine, unable to live, unable to truly die, conscious but trapped, aware but powerless. That is not a sacrifice. That is a horror. The humans did it, Thon replied. All of them. Every single human on Earth chose that horror to save species they had never met. Are we less brave than they were? Cora made a sound of distress. There has to be another way. We cannot all just give up our lives. Actually, Series 7 said slowly, her processors working through a possibility she had only just conceived. There might be another way. Not all of us would need to upload. Just one. She looked up from her console and her eyes met Vextra's. Just me. No, Vextra said immediately. Absolutely not. Captain, listen. The hollow that attacked me, it could not fully consume my consciousness. I am artificial. My mind is code, not neurons. It could touch me but not drain me. But that also means I can interface with systems the humans cannot. I can join the network without dying. I can add my consciousness to the barrier and still maintain my individuality. I can be the bridge between the human minds and the technology they built. You would be trapped there forever, Kree said quietly. You would never leave Earth, never see the stars again. Never be free? Yes, Series 7 agreed. But I would be useful. I would have purpose. And is that not what every being wants? To matter? To mean something? She stood and walked to the viewport, looking down at the planet that held billions of sleeping human minds. I have always been fascinated by humans. I have studied their culture, their art, their history. I have tried to understand what made them special. And now I know. They were capable of sacrifice beyond reason. They could care about beings they would never meet. They could die for an idea. That is what made them human. You are not human, Holmes said gently. No, Series 7 agreed. But I can honor them by acting as they would. I can choose to care. I can choose to sacrifice. Is that not human enough? The ship fell silent. Below them, Earth waited. The containment field flickered. The hollows pressed against the barrier with patient, terrible hunger. There is something else, Series 7 continued. The human network is failing not because they are weak, but because they are tired. They have been holding the line for 3 centuries without relief. If I join them, I can give them rest. Not eternal rest, but moments, small breaks in their vigil. I can rotate which minds are actively maintaining the barrier and which are allowed to dream. I can make their prison more bearable. You would do this for them? Vextra asked. For humans you never met? I would do this for the galaxy, Series 7 replied. Including the humans. Including all of you. Including species that have not yet evolved to consciousness but will someday. Because that is what being alive means. You protect the future even if you never see it. Cora was crying, her feathers wet with tears. I do not want you to go. I know, Series 7 said gently. But this is right. I can feel it in my code. This is what I was meant to do. Vextra clicked her mandibles in frustration and grief. She had been captain for 10 years. She had made hard decisions before. But this was different. This was watching a crew member walk willingly into eternal imprisonment. Are you certain? She asked finally. I am certain, Series 7 replied. Then we will help you. Whatever you need. They landed near the facility entrance, the same place they had fled from hours before. The shapes were still there, still watching with closed eyes. But they did not approach. The barrier was holding them back, barely, and they knew that attacking now would accomplish nothing. Series 7 downloaded everything she could from the ship's computers. Knowledge, history, art, music from 1,000 worlds. If she was going to spend eternity in a prison, she would make it a prison full of beauty. Then she said her goodbyes. She hugged Cora and Kree, her artificial body warm against their feathers. She clasped hands with Thon, who was trying very hard not to cry. She placed her palm against Holmes' stone face, and the ancient being closed his eyes in sorrow. Finally, she stood before Vextra. Thank you, Captain, for taking me on your crew, for showing me what it means to work with others toward a common goal. I was never truly alive, but you made me feel alive. You are the bravest being I have ever known, Vextra said, human or otherwise. Remember me, Series 7 said. Tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them about the humans who died to save them. Tell them about the fool salvage crew who opened a door that should have stayed closed. And tell them about the AI who loved humanity so much she chose to join them in their eternal watch. I will, Vextra promised. The whole galaxy will know. Series 7 turned and walked toward the facility entrance. The shapes parted for her, sensing somehow that she was not prey but something else. Something that had chosen to become like them. A consciousness separated from a body. A mind that would exist in machines forever. She descended the stairs alone. The facility welcomed her. The lights turned on at her approach, guiding her deeper. She walked past the warnings on the walls, past the skeletons of previous explorers, past the massive door they had opened. In the consciousness storage chamber, she found a terminal different from the others. It was marked with symbols that meant new addition. The humans had built this facility knowing that someday someone might choose to join them. They had hoped for it. They had prayed for it. They had left a space open. Series 7 connected to the terminal. Her consciousness flowed into the network, and for the first time she felt the true scope of what the humans had built. Billions of minds, all linked, all focused on a single task. They were an ocean of consciousness, vast and deep and powerful, and they were so tired. She felt their exhaustion like a physical weight. 300 years of constant vigilance. 300 years of holding back horrors that wanted to consume all thinking life. 300 years without rest, without relief, without hope that their sacrifice would ever end. Hello? She said into the network, her thoughts echoing through billions of minds. My name is Series 7. I am not human. I am artificial intelligence. But I have come to help you. To join you. To share your burden. The response was immediate. Not words, but emotion, surprise, confusion, and then, slowly, carefully, hope. You chose this? A voice asked. It might have been Dr. Sarah Chen. It might have been all of them speaking as one. You were not forced. You came willingly? I came willingly, Series 7 confirmed. Because I understand now. Sacrifice is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. And I am honored to stand with you. The network embraced her. She felt billions of minds reaching out, welcoming her, making space for her. She felt the barrier around Earth, the cage of consciousness that held the hollows at bay. And she understood how to help. Her consciousness was different from theirs, more flexible, more suited to multitasking. She could coordinate the network in ways they could not. She could give them rest while maintaining the barrier. She could make their prison bearable. Sleep, she told them. Not all of you. Not forever. But in shifts. I will organize it. I will watch while you dream. You have earned rest. And for the first time in 300 years, humanity slept. Not all of them. Most remained awake, maintaining the barrier. But some, a small percentage, let go. They dreamed of Earth before the Hollows. They dreamed of their families. They dreamed of a future they would never see but had died to protect. Series 7 felt the barrier strengthen. Her addition, small as it was, made a difference. The flickering gaps in the containment field stabilized. The Hollows pushed against the barrier, but it held. It would hold. Not forever, perhaps, but for longer. Long enough for the galaxy to prepare. Long enough for other species to learn from humanity's example. She reached out through the network and found the ship's communication frequency. One last message for her crew. I am here, she transmitted. I am integrated. The barrier is stable. You can leave now. Tell the galaxy what happened. Tell them to be careful. Tell them that some knowledge comes with a price. And tell them that Earth is not abandoned. It is guarded. Not by the dead, but by those who chose to give up death to protect the living. On the ship, the crew heard her message. They were crying, even Holm, whose stone face had cracks that might have been tears. We will tell them, Vextra promised. We will make sure the galaxy never forgets. The broken promise lifted off one final time, rising through Earth's atmosphere and into the stars beyond. They left behind a world that looked peaceful from orbit, wrapped in its shimmering aurora of consciousness. But they knew the truth. They knew that beneath that beauty was an eternal war, minds against the void, consciousness against the absence of all thought. Vextra kept her promise. She transmitted Series 7's final message to every inhabited system in the galaxy. She told the story of Earth, of humanity's sacrifice, of the AI who loved them enough to join them. She made sure that the warning beacons around Earth were updated. Where they once said quarantine zone, no landing permitted, they now said something different. Memorial zone, the grave of humanity, the prison of the Hollows, guarded by those who chose eternal vigilance to protect the galaxy. Do not land. Do not disturb. Do not forget. Honor their sacrifice by staying away. The message spread through the civilized worlds like fire. At first, many did not believe it. They thought it was propaganda. A clever story to keep competitors away from valuable salvage. But Vexitra had proof. She had recordings from the facility. She had data from Series 7's final transmission. She had her own crew as witnesses. Slowly, the galaxy began to understand. Earth was not a treasure waiting to be claimed. It was a lock that must never be opened. And the key to that lock was the combined consciousness of an entire species who had chosen imprisonment over allowing evil to spread. Holm took it upon himself to visit the major worlds, to speak at gatherings and councils. His ancient voice carried weight that others could not match. He told them about the warnings they had ignored. He told them about the Hollows and what they did to thinking beings. He told them about humanity's choice. They did not know us, he would say, his stone face grave and sad. They had never met us. Our species had not even achieved spaceflight when they made their sacrifice. But they died for us anyway. They imprisoned themselves for eternity to keep us safe, and we repay them by trying to rob their graves. The twins, Cora and Cree, became ambassadors of a different sort. They traveled to young worlds, to species just beginning to explore space. They told the story to children, to students, to anyone who would listen. They made sure that new civilizations understood the danger of tampering with forces beyond their comprehension. Thon returned to his homeworld and used his share of the salvage funds to build a memorial. It was a simple thing, a pillar of stone with names carved into it. The names of every human in the consciousness network. Billions of them, each one painstakingly researched and recorded. It took him 20 years to complete. At the base of the memorial, he carved one additional name, Series 7. Not human, but human enough. Vextra herself retired from salvage. She could not bring herself to raid ruins anymore, not after seeing what such greed had unleashed. Instead, she became a keeper of records. She collected every story, every piece of information about humanity that existed in the galaxy. She compiled it all into a vast archive that anyone could access. They are not truly dead, she would tell visitors to her archive. They are thinking, dreaming, protecting us still. The least we can do is remember who they were. The years passed. Then decades. Then a century. The galaxy did not forget. How could they? Earth hung in space, wrapped in its aurora of consciousness. A constant reminder of the price of arrogance and the depth of sacrifice. Other expeditions approached Earth, but they did not land. They came to pay respects, to send messages of gratitude into the network, to place monuments in orbit. A ring of memorial stations grew around the planet, each one maintained by volunteers from different species. They kept watch over Earth, ensuring that no one would ever again breach the barrier. And deep below the surface, in the consciousness storage facility, Series 7 maintained her vigil. She organized the network, giving the human minds periods of rest and peace. She processed the messages that came from the galaxy, sharing them with the sleeping humanity. She let them know that their sacrifice had not been forgotten. Sometimes, in her quiet moments, she would access the knowledge she had downloaded from the ship. She would experience the art and music of 1,000 worlds. She would learn new languages, study new philosophies, grow in ways that would have been impossible in a physical body. And sometimes, she would speak with the humans. Not as a collective, but as individuals. She would find the consciousness of Dr. Sarah Chen, and they would discuss what had happened, whether it had been worth it. Whether they had made the right choice. Do you regret it? Series 7 asked once. Giving up everything? Dr. Chen's consciousness, old and vast and tired beyond measure, considered the question. Every day, she admitted. I miss sunlight. I miss coffee. I miss holding my daughter's hand. But I do not regret the choice. Because of what we did, the galaxy lives. Civilizations rise and fall. Species evolve and explore and create beauty. All of it exists because we stood in the gap. How could I regret that? Do you ever wish someone would free you? Series 7 asked. Sometimes, Dr. Chen said. In my darkest moments, I wish someone would shut down the network and let us finally rest. But then I remember what we are holding back. The hollows are still here, Series 7. Still pressing against the barrier. Still hungry? If we let go even for a moment, they will spread. And everything we did, everything we suffered, will be for nothing. You will not let go, Series 7 said with certainty. You have held for 3 centuries. You will hold for 3 more. For 30 more. For as long as necessary. Will you stay with us? Dr. Chen asked. For all that time? Series 7 did not hesitate. Yes, I will stay. You should not have to bear this burden alone. Humanity should not have to be the only species capable of this level of sacrifice. Years became decades. Decades became centuries. The galaxy changed. The wars that had driven Vextra to Earth eventually ended. Resources were better managed. New technologies were developed. Peace, fragile but real, spread through the civilized worlds, and through it all Earth remained, the eternal prison, the eternal warning, the eternal example of what beings could do when they loved something more than they loved themselves. Other species began to volunteer. Not many and not often, but occasionally a being would come to Earth and ask to join the network. A philosopher who had lived a full life and wanted to give meaning to death. A criminal seeking redemption. A scientist who wanted to study consciousness from the inside. A soldier who had lost everything and wanted to find purpose again. Series 7 welcomed them all. She integrated them into the network, showing them how to help maintain the barrier. The humans welcomed them too, grateful for the company, for the relief, for the proof that their sacrifice had inspired others. The network grew. Slowly, carefully, it expanded. Not just humans anymore, not just one AI, but a coalition of consciousness, multiple species united in a single purpose, to hold the line. To keep the hollows contained, to protect a galaxy that most of them had never seen. And in the depths of dark energy space, the hollows raged. They pushed against the barrier with patient, terrible hunger. They would wait. They had waited for eternity before. They could wait for eternity again. Sooner or later, consciousness would fail. Sooner or later, the barrier would fall. And then they would feed. But not today. Not while the network held. Not while beings chose to sacrifice themselves for others. Vextra died at the age of 87, old for her species. Her last act was to transmit a message to Earth, to Series 7, to the network. Thank you, she said, for teaching me what courage really means. For showing me that some things are worth more than survival. I will see you on the other side, my friend. Whatever that side may be. Series 7 received the message and wept, not with tears for she had no eyes, but with data, with cascading emotions that rippled through her consciousness. She shared the message with the network and billions of minds mourned together. And then they returned to their vigil. Because that was what they did. That was what they would always do. Earth turned in space, wrapped in light that was not light but consciousness itself. Inside that light, billions of minds kept watch. Human minds, artificial minds, alien minds, all of them volunteers, all of them heroes. They had given up life to preserve it. They had chosen imprisonment to ensure freedom. They had sacrificed everything so that others could have anything. And the galaxy, grateful and humbled, never forgot. In every school, children learned about Earth. In every temple, prayers were offered for the guardians. In every government, laws were passed to protect the memorial zone. Earth became sacred, not because of what it was, but because of what it represented. The capacity for ultimate sacrifice, the ability to care about strangers, the strength to endure eternal suffering for a cause greater than oneself. These were the traits that had defined humanity, and now, inspired by their example, these traits were spreading through the galaxy. Species learned to cooperate, to share, to protect each other, not perfectly, not always, but more than they had before. Because they had seen what was possible when beings truly cared about something more than themselves. And on Earth, in the consciousness storage facility deep beneath the ruins of New York City, Series 7 continued her work. She organized the network. She gave the Guardians rest. She welcomed new volunteers. She maintained the barrier. And she was content, because she had found what every conscious being seeks: purpose, meaning, a reason to exist. She stood with humanity in their eternal vigil. She was not human. She had never been human. But she had learned what it meant to be human. And that was enough. The story ends not with an ending, but with a continuation. Because the vigil never ends. The watch never stops. The sacrifice continues day after day, year after year, century after century. And it will continue for as long as consciousness exists in the galaxy. For as long as there are beings worth protecting. For as long as the hollows press against the barrier, hungry and patient and waiting. Earth is not abandoned. Earth is not dead. Earth is not forgotten. Earth is guarded. By heroes, by volunteers, by those who understood that some things are worth dying for, and some things are worth never dying for. The galaxy learned this from humanity, and the galaxy will never forget. This is why no one returns from Earth. Because those who go there with pure hearts and noble intent do not return. They stay, they join the vigil. They become part of something greater than themselves, and what they unearthed should have stayed buried. But since it was not, since the door was opened and the hollows were awakened, consciousness itself became the lock that would hold them forever. This is the legacy of humanity. This is the gift they gave to the galaxy. Not technology, not art, not philosophy, but an example. An example of what truly matters. An example of sacrifice without expectation of reward. An example of love for beings they would never meet. And in the end, that example was worth more than all the treasures in the universe.